Hello everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our series, I guess, at this rate, on what your exotic weapon or armor piece says about you. This time we're going on to energy weapons. Now, before we start the video, I just want to say we are so close to 450 subs. I'd really appreciate it all if you guys could help us reach that as soon as possible. And now let's get into the video. Starting off, we have Cold Heart, the very first trace rifle added into the game. If this is your main exotic, you are one Arc Warlock, I'm going to assume. You love making ionic traces. You live for the trace. All you do is run solo lost sectors using this, and I'm going to assume that you're using my Warlock build that I made a video on. You know how strong this could be for any activity. It's good in PvP sometimes, and also high in content. If Merciless is your weapon of choice, then you miss the old days back in Leviathan when you could use it for great DPS, and now that it's usable for solo Nezarec, you are happy. You love seeing this gun get its praise again for what it can do, but you still miss when it could be used by a whole group of 6 for the best DPS on Callus. If you're using Fighting Lion, you're weirder. That's the simple way. You probably play Trials of Cyrus and love getting spicy clips of you doming someone with this by rebounding off of multiple walls across the map. If you use Sunshot though, we know you are a true god at Destiny. You love to create solar orbs during Season of the Witch. You live for the explosions. This gun was probably your first ever exotic in Destiny 2 because of the Red War, and you haven't taken it off since. If you're like me, you run Solar Titan at all times with it. This is going to never be. This exotic will never be replaced by you. If Graviton Lance is your forte, then you love the factor that on Void Warlock you can have Child of the Old Gods at all times when using this and the new gauntlets that came out during Season of the Witch. You absolutely destroy the battlefield, and if you weren't a person using it in PvE, then you just missed when it was broken in PvP for that short amount of time during this season, and you want it to come back to that. You missed that. You want it so you can ruin everyone else's day at all times. If you're using Skyburners as your weapon of choice, you got fed up with Phalanx shields. You have just given in to using this just so you can bypass them at all times. Other than that, you're just a weirdo if you use it in PvP. And if your Hardlight is your weapon of choice, you hated Match Game so much that this was ingrained into your loadout, and you just haven't taken it off since. You forgot that other exotics even exist in this game. And if you use Risk Runner, since Arc 3.0, you've had this thing fused to your hip. You throw nades at yourself in PvP, PvE, it does not matter what content it is. If Borealis is your weapon of choice, I can only assume you use it for the same reason as me, and that is to have it on Arc when playing PvP and hip firing with it using a strand build for the no scopes. If Prometheus Lens is your exotic of choice though, you exclusively play momentum control. No other gamer in the game satisfies your itch. You love that this weapon that gamer can melt from any range, and it will not stop people. It will not stop you, but you wish it was better in everything else. You know it's one of the worst trace rifles. If you still use Telesto right now, in this current day, you will not shut up about when it broke the game on any occasion. You run the emblem from its secret event on all 3 of your characters. You do not shut up about this gun, ever. I can only assume if you main Polaris Lance that you cosplay as Anna Bray every time you go to somewhere like Comic Con. Your character is set to look like her. If Lord of Wars is for you, you run the emblem you got playing the Chaos Weekend with it. You love this gun. No one can really take that from you, but we all question you. It got nerfed into the ground, yet you still use it. fair play. And if you run Trinity Ghoul, you hate on forbearance 24/7. You think you are better than every single forbearance user. And you're not too wrong. Only problem is exotic. You know if you switch to forbearance, you could use a different exotic in any other slot. But no, you will stick with this through thick and thin. That catalyst is your baby. And Wave Splitter, if you use this, you beg for it to get a catalyst soon. But you know Bungie's just forgotten about it. You don't know how to convince people to play with it, but you try. You keep making builds with it. You've done every single class, yet nothing works until you ran it on Void Warlock, and you know that. If you use Jotun, you make non-stop toaster jokes, and if you're using it in PvP, you are scum. You laugh at making people rage quit because you keep flying them around the corner. And if you're using Le Monarch in PvP, you're even worse. You cried when you read that it was getting nerfed. But if you use it in PvE, you understand the pure strength of this weapon. You understand that it can just stun overload captains and stop them from teleporting like almost consistently at all times. This is your lord and savior when it comes to Sword and Saber Strike. If you're using Taraba, you know there's other SMGs that are better out there, but you also understand the pure strength of the Ravenous Beast and how it can absolutely shred even adept mortals in PvP. You wish it wouldn't like get taken away when you switch, but you also understand it's to balance it. You're just hoping for the day Bungie remembers that this gun exists and can buff it for you, so that everyone will use it, and you can finally show off all your kills on the weapon without looking batshit insane. And if you're using Divinity, I feel bad for you. We all do. We know you're a well warlock who has just been turned into div bitch. You understand that now. It just stays on your character at all times. If you're using Ariana's Vow, you hate Arbalist. You use this before Arbalist got anti-barrier. You still use it in Grandmasters and try to say to everyone that it's better than Arbalist, but it's not. When making this video, I had the question if symmetry users even existed. I didn't even know this gun got a buff so it could jolt when you use the Arc Seeker, but here it is. If you're using Devil Ruin, you really are this true Vanguard. You understand the true strength of sidearms, but you know it's not as good as Trespasser. But the laser is funny to you to use, and you laugh at everyone who has the misfortune to get shot by it when you use it. You've tried bringing it into PvE, but it just doesn't feel right, even with Unstoppable on it. So you just stick to PvP. You now exclusively play PvP. If Force Horseman is the exotic you have devoted yourself to, you try it on every raid boss there is. You love to say that it does the best DPS in the game, when it doesn't, but you also just know it's fun to use in that circumstance. If there is a single toy matchbook main, I would love to meet them and ask why. I'm assuming you've got killed by this thing multiple times because it kills you. And if you are still sticking with Ruinous Effigy up right now, you cried and cried when it got nerfed because it was a fun exotic. It was never OP. For every single duality main, I have one question for you. Which mode is better? You don't know the answer to that. You love the slugs because you started as a chaperone main, but then you also love the fact that it can be like Fellwinters. You go through phases where you might just only use the slug version, and then next week you might just use the hipfire so you can get your pellets. You have no clue what's better. And here it is, me, a Cloudstrike main in PvP. You were upset by the nerf. It hurt, but when you saw that it didn't get nerfed too bad, when you actually used it, you giggle every time you get a mass kill. especially if it's on three or more people at a time. You save every clip of any time you get multiple kills. Itiku's Divination main understands it is not their best exotic that they could use when it comes to bows, but they also stand the diversity of it. It allows for some interesting explosions to happen, plus it's a bit of a joke to use in PvP. It's quite entertaining to see these people at work and see how their mind tries to figure out all the angles that these hip-fired arrows would go. If you're using Vets Mythoclast right now, you try to convince your friends that it is the best PvE exotic out there. It's not. You know it's not. But you just find it fun. You're excited for the buffs coming next season. And if you're using the Rents Driver, you understand that everyone hated you during the season of the Lost. But now you're kind of like standing out. You're a bit of an off-meta player now. And you don't know how to feel about that. You take it in your stride though, because if you're in a match, you can still wreak havoc, but no one really complains like they used to. So you don't know how to feel about that, ever. If you use any of the class-specific glaives, you're just waiting for the buff. You have been begging for a buff until they got announced. And the Hunter one you only use in PvP, the Titan one you only use to cheese Riven, and the Warlock one you understood had no need in the game until now, until it gets its buff. But you never minded. You still stuck by them, and you probably have it leveled beyond anyone else's comprehension. If you use Dead Messenger, you swear by the factor that wave frames are best in PvP, and you have multiple clips of you capturing a zone in control by sending off a wave and hitting multiple enemies and then igniting them. If you're using Collective Obligation, you are a Void, Warlock, or Hunter who has built into it heavily. You love build crafting, it's your favourite part of Destiny. You have a build out there that somehow takes hold of every single Void ability and debuff at once. You laugh when people say this is bad, and you show them why it's not. If you use Trespasser, you probably forgot that this came from Destiny 1, all the way back in Rise of Iron, and that fact shocks you whenever you actually get told it. And if that doesn't shock you, you have just got used to it by now. But it used to shock you. If you use this in PvP, which is the only really viable place, it's just autopilot to reload after a kill, even if you haven't proc tunnel vision from the catalyst. You have multiple clips of you wiping out the entire team with it. If you are using Delicate Tomb, one, I must ask how, and two, everyone in the game knows that you love Nezarec. You were devoted to that storyline until the end of Root. And if you're using Hierarchy of Needs, you run the cowboy hat on all three characters. We all know that. You only use this bow because it's from that dungeon. Other than that, you wouldn't touch it. And if you're using the Manticore, the airborne effectiveness stat being added into the game made you very depressed, but you just figured you use this to get around it, even though it still sucks. And if you're using Excalibur, you loved walking around on Io when it was in the game. You probably run the ornament for this, and you've done it solo multiple times just for the giggles. And if you're using Centrifuge, I want you to know I hated you last season. You probably run Arc Titan using Shoulder Charge and Juggernaut. Everyone who comes across you, hates you in PvP. But if you use it in PvE, you just love being able to run and just have a little bonus damage stat when playing the game. And no one can complain at that. You're just enjoying what you do. Now that it's not as prevalent in PvP, no one overly complains. We all know you're balanced out now. And we can all go back to complaining about Immortal users. And if you're using Extras, you have become a Boomer Knight. You're probably a hunter using the Mothkeeper gauntlets as well, just so you can have the blind effect and then hit someone with this. You love stacking your ammo and then firing multiple rounds. Now, I would love to show the pre-order exotic, but I don't have it and it won't show in my collections. So, if you use that, you're build crafter. Easy as, you love build crafting. Every single little technical thing you can do, you will do. Thank you guys for stopping by in this video. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and sub. Peace.